any other kind of tree you want to put it on. And with that said, let me go ahead and switch over to me. Hump Day, Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everybody. We're going to be talking about how to create a custom ornament for your holiday, Christmas design, decorations, tree, whatever it happens to be, whatever it is you celebrate or just simply want to use this technique for. It doesn't have to be holiday related. But with that said, my name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe. It's my pleasure to be streaming to you live today. And I got to give a shout out. I see Victoria over there in the chat already. She helped me immensely with this particular demo. I was failing miserably on how I was going to do it. So she set me straight. I'm going to put in her website there for her tutorials, vptv.me, I believe it is. You guys should check that out. She's done way more Dimension demos than I will ever do. .me, I'll put it in both chats here. And so I just want to give you guys a heads up and thank her once again for all of her hard work in helping me get this demo together. So with that said, hopefully I can't fail because that would be embarrassing. All right, so let's go ahead and switch over. Nope, we're not talking about 3D printing. This is going to be all digital. So not a 3D print of a holiday ornament, although that could be a topic someday. This is going to be talking about, and by the way, thank you for the stream is super crisp. I'm glad you like that. The quality is coming across on Twitter as well. And we're going to be talking about a product that's part of the Creative Cloud called Adobe Dimension CC. Now, what I'm going to show you, you could arguably say, well, I could do that in Photoshop. And I would say, yeah, you probably could if you got the skills to do it. But doing what I'm about to show you in Photoshop would be a lot harder to make it match, to make it look right, to make it look like it was always there, part of the photo. And that's the whole beauty of Dimension, is that it does allow you to composite and even make up 3D elements and composite them into a photographic or 2D scene very easily. All right, so with that said, I got Dimension open. I'm just going to go ahead and say create new, which that's where you start with Dimension, unless you've got one that you've already started. When I say create new, it gives me this empty ground plane and this empty scene. And you can, it doesn't really matter if you start with the photo or start with the 3D object you're trying to create. In this case, since I'm trying to put a 3D object in the photo, I want to start with the photo because it's just easier. I can see everything. I can see what I'm doing. I can kind of match things better. But just to let you know, you can start with just working with 3D and working with the models and the materials and everything, or you can start with the photo. Today, I'm going to start with the photo. So I'm going to switch over to my Adobe stock library because I found a picture in Adobe stock of a Christmas tree. You can, of course, use your own photos. You don't have to use the ones from stock. And this one's a green tree with some nice gold ornaments on it. And this is what I mean by the hard part. If you're trying to add a new ornament and make it look right, it would need to have the same properties, or at least similar properties as what you already see. The same reflections, the same light source, the same this, the same that. And again, while you could do that in Photoshop, it'd be a lot harder than what I'm about to show you. All right, so I've got the image in, and I'm gonna, before I go any further, I'm gonna click this button over here on the right-hand side. It says match image. Match image, instantly align and light your scene with the information from the photo. So in other words, everything I add after the fact will take into account the lighting and the direction and all of that from the existing photo. So I just click that button and it gives me all the things I can tell it to do. So resize the canvas to match the photo, create an environmental light from the photo, match the sunlight from the photo. In other words, this is the Adobe magic button. Just click that button and let it do its thing. Now, it's done its thing. We haven't added anything else, so there's no visible result. But now all of those things have been taken into account in your dimension demo. That's another reason why I want to start with the photo, because I can get all that set up. Now, the next thing that's really important for this to work right is you see this grid going through dimension, and this grid is your ground plane. So right now my ground plane is like up in the top middle of the tree. I want to bring it down, bring it lower, but what I don't want you to do is what I tend to do sometimes is I bring my ground plane down lower, I click this button, and I bring it down like that. And you notice that for the whole grid, the lines are really light, they're really faint. But then there's that one intersection where it's kind of dark. That dark intersection is, think of that as the floor. So if I bring the floor below my visible view, when I start adding things in, especially if they're small, I may not even see them because they're on the floor, and the floor is now below the scene. So I want you to do this. Never put your floor below your visible scene. You can change it later if you want, if you really want things below the scene. But don't do that. So the way you can get around that is you can lift the floor up, you can change the perspective, and then pull the whole thing down so the floor is still visible. In other words, now when I add things, it'll plop them right there in the middle of the floor, which is great because I can still see them. All right, next up, we're going to KJ Foster. I've been researching this very thing. Well, good. Hopefully you get something out of this. All right, so next up, I got my photo in, changed my light source, changed my ground plane, or match the photo for the light source. Now I need to actually get my 3D object. And while I could cheat, I could go into my Adobe Dimension library where I've got two beautiful ornaments that are already ready to go that I got from Adobe stock. We're going to build one from scratch. This is the way I was going to do it. And Victoria talked me out of it and said, no, show them how to do it from scratch. So here we go. Let's do it from scratch. So instead, and by the way, if you chicken out, you can always go search Adobe stock and grab your own 3D ornaments and pull them in, and they're beautiful and they're already done for you. But if you want to really make your own custom one, switch from libraries to starter assets. Or you might already be on starter assets if you never used your CC libraries while you're in Dimension. This is what it defaults to. And in your assets, you're going to grab three things. You're going to use three things. You're going to use the sphere, you're going to use the cylinder, and you're going to use the torus, whatever a torus is. But you're going to use those three things. And the reason I'm telling you those three things, because they all come with the starter pack. So you've already got these three things. So the sphere is an obvious one. What's that for? Well, that's going to give us this. And notice, instead of it coming in gray or white, it's coming in with the colors already from the scene. So it's already picking up this brown. And look at, it's even got a kind of a small reflection over here on the right-hand side, because that's where the light's coming from in the scene. So it's already starting to do those things for me. Next up, I want the cylinder. So when I click the cylinder, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to put it right in the middle, right in front of the sphere, and it's going to be huge. All right, so we want to scale this down. So I'm going to grab the scale. I'm going to hold down my shift key. Oh, hang on. Grab the scale. There we go. Hold down my shift key and scale it down. Now, it's scaling it down, and it's hard to do it because it's in the middle of the other object. So I'm going to go ahead and just scale it down some more. Scale it down some more. I don't want to scale it down so small to where I can't see it. So let's go ahead and pick it up and get it out of the way now. So I'm going to grab the move tool. And with the move tool, I'm just going to click on it. And sorry, wrong tool. Not the plane tool. We're going to grab the move tool. I said the right tool, but I grabbed the wrong tool. We're just going to move it up. Starting to see why we need the cylinder. That's going to be the top. All right, so now let's go ahead and now we can scale it a bit more if we want. And let's scale it down a little smaller, a little smaller, a little smaller. And we're going to move it up, the move tool, the one at the top, not the one in the middle, and move it up a little bit higher. All right. Now, I could just go with that, but if you really were going to make this authentic, you're probably going to need some kind of hook or mechanism to actually hang it onto the tree, and especially since the other ones already have hooks and things to hang them on the tree. Now, I could steal one of the ones that's already there. I could put my new ornament in the spot over an old one and use its hook. So you do have that option. But let's go ahead and make it all 3D. Let's grab the torus, click, it just adds it in. I'm already on the move tool, so I'm just going to move it up to the top. And it's kind of cool how that wraps around it. That's kind of sweet. I'm going to scale it, but I'm going to scale it from the top to make it thinner. So I'm not holding down the shift key on purpose because I want to make it skinny. I'm distorting it basically. All right, and next I'm going to go ahead and now I'm going to hold down the shift key and scale it down smaller. Perfect. And now we'll use the, what's this tool called? The rotate tool to rotate it into place. There we go. Get something like that. You can spin it around, get it. So this is the cool thing about working in 3D is that you get to do things like this. You get to put it where you want, rotate it a little bit more, rotate it more that way. And now we can use the move tool once again to maybe move it down a bit so it looks like it's coming out of the top of it. Okay, now what that did is that created I'll call it a layer for each one of those objects. So here's the sphere, here's the cylinder, here's the torus. So it put all of those separately on the panel over here. I'm going to select all three. So I'm going to hold down my shift key and just select all three of these. Once I get all three selected, now I can make them shiny. I can add my material to them. So I'm going to go ahead and just go over here to materials. So the first tab was models. That's all the models we were working with. The second tab, materials. Now, these again come with the starter pack. I do want to point out that if you are using a mobile device like a smartphone or a tablet and you're using Adobe Capture CC, which is a mobile app on your device, you can go download it. It's free to download from your respective app stores. You can actually capture your own materials. So if you want something totally unique, some design, some wallpaper, something that's in your house, you can go snap a picture of it with Capture CC and save it as a material, and it will be in your library when you get back to Dimension to use it. Now, I didn't think to do it up front, so I'm going to go ahead and just grab this gold material for all three of those layers and look at what it's doing. Now, the unique thing about this is it's grabbing a reflection from the tree based on where it is. It's grabbing the light source that's coming in from that side. I don't want to say the right side or left side, but that side. It's doing all that work because we clicked that magic button early on to say match everything to the photo. So it's just doing all that for me. Now the next thing I'm going to do is with all three of those still selected, and this becomes the tricky part depending on where you grab. I'm on the move tool. I'm going to move these objects. And again, it's keeping this in perspective to the ground plane. I'm going to move these objects, move them. Oh, before I do that, right, one more thing before I move that over. This was creating a custom ornament, not just an ornament. So let's customize it now. What I did was I went into Photoshop. You can do it in Photoshop or Illustrator. I created some text. So let me go back to my library so I can show it to you. And I thought I saved it in here. Maybe I didn't. Or maybe I will need to do it again because this library doesn't look like it updated. Oh, here it comes. There we go. I clicked the update button and here it is. I saved some text called the Smith family. I just saved it in a script font, red letters on its own layer, added it to my library so I'd be able to drag it into Dimension. So I added one with a white background and some kind of garland on the top and bottom. I don't like that one as much. I really like the plain text. I tried it earlier. The plain text one works better. All right, so that, Javen saying, hey, I thought you no longer needed to hold down the shift key in Photoshop. We're not in Photoshop, we're in Dimension. All right, so let's go ahead and drag this over. And when I drag that over, look, it comes over and it starts to map to the 3D object. Now it's still selected. So it knew we were in the sphere. it knows that it's the graphic that we just pulled over. And while we've got all that selected, we can go ahead and apply some properties to it. So I want to, you could lower the opacity of it if you want to fade it into the object, kind of make it look like it's ghost printed. Or we can add some more metallic to it to make it more shiny like the rest of the object. We can also scale it. We're in Dimension, so we do have still, I hold down the Shift key. Scale it down. You can move it around and look, it knows it's 3D. And this is the part that I was talking about. Yeah, you can do this in Photoshop, but this is where this is a whole lot easier doing this in Dimension because it knows that this is 3D. So we mapped it to a 3D object, and therefore we're pulling it into that 3D object very nicely. You can move it around, of course. You can pick up the whole thing and move it around like I just did. You could scale it. You could also rotate it. So if you needed it to rotate because, I don't know, you need it to rotate, you can rotate it. All right, so now I'm going to back out of this sphere because we're no longer working inside the sphere anymore. I'm going to go back to select all three things once again and make sure we're on the Move tool. And the Move tool will kind of guide you. You can, for example, if I grab the green arrow, I'm moving the whole thing up and down. Grab the red arrow, I'm moving it to the right. Grab the blue arrow, I'm moving to the left. But I have this little red pinkish thing at the bottom there. If I pick that up, I'm moving the whole thing. So I'm moving it and scaling it at the same time. And weirdly enough, that one doesn't require the Shift key. So I can pull it. Now, it's not going to let me move it up and down. It's just going to let me guide it and scale it at the same time. So I can get that kind of where I want it to be. And if I did want to do that trick that I was talking about where I put it over the top of another ornament. See what happens though? Because of the ground plane, I'm actually pulling that down below everything else. So I don't want to, because the ground plane goes off into that direction. So I can't pull it down too far, so I can't cover up this one unless I move the whole ground plane down, which is certainly easy enough to do. There we go. If I move the whole thing down, now the floor is down there, and now I can move it left and right further without it going into the ground. And do I still have all three selected? I do. So I could move it, for example, over the top of an existing ornament. Now, the only thing is that ornament was wrapped behind the ribbon. The ribbon is a flat 2D object, so I can't fake that unless I go do that part in Photoshop. All right, but anyway, I can, for example, mask part of the ornament so that the ribbon shows through. But anyway, I've got it there, and now you're probably saying, okay, that doesn't look as shiny and as smooth and as clean as the rest of the photo. That's because it's not rendered. It's just sitting here on top of the photo. So you can get a quick render preview at any time by clicking the render preview button, and that will, which you can of course zoom this out. And that's just showing me it's rendering in real time, and it'll just keep rendering as fast as your computer will allow. And that will start to pick up these shiny properties and reflections and doing all the cool things that it's supposed to do. And then once you're satisfied with the way it looks, then you can go in and actually perform the real render. You can render out a file, you can render out a native Photoshop file with all the layers. So you can take it into Photoshop and do more. So if I take it over to the render queue, at this point, I would give it a name. So I would call it Ornament Live, because we did this live. And we'll save it to the desktop as a Photoshop file, 16-bit. You can also choose your quality. Low, fast means I just want to kind of quickly do it. Maybe I don't want to see it in its full resolution yet because I'm still testing. Or I can go high, slow means it's going to take up more time, depending on your computer, depending on how complex it is, to render out a usable, high-quality one. All right, so once I do that, so let's say we do the low and fast for now, render that out. That'll start doing its rendering. It'll give you an estimated time. Even if you throw Dimension in the background and do something else while this is going, it'll pop up a notification letting you know it's finished. This one's going to go pretty quick because it's low res, but we're not going to wait for it because I've already got one in Photoshop that I rendered out earlier. So here's a rendered version of it. That's, again, I think that one's low res. Hang on, let me zoom in over here. There we go. Low res, not the full res quality, and it's a small file to begin with, so it looks pretty good. I'm not happy with the way the reflection's happening down here, so I'd probably move it around and re-render it out again. And it's picking something up that's in this area. So I'd probably move it up a little bit and try it again. I was also maybe take it into Photoshop and put some of the branches through the loop itself. And when I say that, we're in Photoshop. So this is all on its own layers, so you can go in and manipulate it any way you want. So the ornament that you created in Dimension is on a layer all by itself. You can pick it up, move it around, do whatever you want, mask it, so forth and so on. So if I were going to try to put this behind the ribbon, like I was talking about before, make sure we're on that layer, move it down. And what I might do in this case is just simply add a mask, like so, grab my stylus and my brush and my black paint and a smaller brush. There we go. And then I just simply mask out a portion of it non-destructively so that ribbon shows through. And that actually looks more realistic because it looks like the blades of grass are actually coming over the top of the ornament, which they are. And now we got the ribbon showing through. There we go. So I'm tucking it down behind the ribbon using a Photoshop mask to do that. All right, so with that said, that is a quick look at how you can do something custom using Adobe Dimension, Adobe Dimension CC, which is a part of your Creative Cloud full application. So if you, or full membership, if you have the Creative Cloud full membership, you can go download Dimension, start playing with it today. And again, we created that ornament literally just with the starter items, the cylinder, the sphere, the torus, and put those three objects together, use the material, and then away we go. All right, so thanks again. Shout out to Victoria Pavlov for the suggestion on creating it from scratch versus cheating and using one of the ornaments from stock. And she was right. It was better doing it from scratch. All right, cheers everybody. Take care. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you on the next one. Yes, the software is available on Windows. All right, bye everybody.